You made your breakfast this morning. Maybe it was something light, toast, a bowl of cereal, perhaps some fruit on the side. You sat down, ate without rushing, and felt perfectly fine afterward. No chest pain, no dizziness, no reason to worry. And that is precisely the problem, because the foods that damage your heart the most are never the ones that make you feel sick immediately. They do not announce themselves. They do not send warning signals the moment they enter your body. They work slowly, quietly, consistently, meal after meal, day after day, until one morning your doctor is sitting across from you with a look on his face that changes everything. That is not a dramatic exaggeration. That is what happens in cardiology offices across this country every single week. Patients who felt completely fine. Patients who were eating what they genuinely believed was a healthy, or at least a harmless diet. Patients who had no idea that 3 specific foods they were consuming regularly were systematically inflaming their arteries, stiffening their blood vessels, and setting the stage for a cardiac event that could have been prevented. And here is what makes this especially urgent if you are over 60. Your cardiovascular system at 60 is not the same system you had at 40. The arteries are less elastic. The heart muscle works harder to push blood through vessels that have accumulated decades of wear. The body's ability to recover from inflammation is slower. What a younger body might tolerate and compensate for, an older body simply cannot absorb the same way. The margin for error gets smaller every year. I have spent over a decade working with cardiac patients. I have reviewed thousands of dietary histories. I have sat with patients after their first heart attack and gone through everything they ate in the months leading up to it. And the same foods appear on those lists with a frequency that is impossible to ignore. Not exotic foods, not unusual combinations, foods that are sitting in kitchens right now. Foods that are being marketed to you as acceptable, even beneficial. Foods that millions of seniors are consuming today without a single moment of suspicion. Before I tell you what those 3 foods are, I need you to understand something first. The danger is not always in the ingredient itself. Sometimes the danger is in what happens to that ingredient when it is processed, when it is combined with other things, when it is consumed in the patterns that modern life has normalized. That distinction matters because it explains why so many people are genuinely confused about what is actually harming them. They read one headline saying something is healthy and another headline saying the opposite, and they have no idea who to believe anymore. So let us cut through all of that right now. The first food is one that almost every senior in this country consumes regularly, and most of them consume it daily. Bread, not all bread, and that distinction is critical, but the specific type of bread that lines the shelves of virtually every grocery store in America. White bread, commercial sandwich bread, the soft packaged loaves that have a shelf life far longer than any natural food product has any business having. Here is what is happening inside your body every time you eat a slice of that bread. It is converted to sugar faster than almost any other food you can consume. The glycemic response is rapid and sharp. Your blood sugar spikes. Your pancreas releases a surge of insulin. And if this is happening multiple times a day, every single day, the damage that accumulates inside your blood vessels is profound, but the sugar spike is only part of the story. What most people do not know is that commercial white bread contains something called advanced glycation end products, AGEs, which are compounds formed during the high heat processing that these breads undergo. AGEs are directly linked to arterial stiffness. They attach to the walls of your blood vessels and trigger an inflammatory response that, over time, accelerates the very arterial damage that leads to heart attacks and strokes. And for seniors specifically, this matters more than it does for anyone else, because arterial stiffness is already a natural consequence of aging. Your arteries naturally lose some of their flexibility over time, but consuming foods high in AGEs accelerates that process dramatically. You are essentially fast-forwarding the clock on your cardiovascular, agging every time you eat that bread. Now I am not telling you that you can never eat bread again. That is not realistic, and it is not what the science actually demands. What I'm telling you is that the specific bread most seniors are eating most mornings is quietly contributing to a level of arterial inflammation that their doctors may not even be connecting to their diet. Because by the time the damage is visible on a scan or measurable in a blood panel, it has been building for years. The second food is going to surprise you more than the first one did. And I say that because this food has a health halo around it that is almost impossible to penetrate. People genuinely believe it is good for them. It has been marketed that way for decades. It is positioned as a heart-healthy option, a smart choice, a responsible decision. And yet the specific form in which most seniors consume it is doing measurable damage to their cardiovascular system. I am talking about vegetable oil. Specifically the refined vegetable oils, soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, canola oil in its highly processed commercial form, that have become the dominant cooking fats in American households and in virtually every restaurant, fast food chain, and packaged food product manufactured in this country. The problem with these oils is not immediately obvious, which is exactly why the damage goes undetected for so long. These oils are extraordinarily high in omega-6 fatty acids. And while your body does need some omega-6, the ratio between omega-6 and omega-3 in your diet is critical to controlling systemic inflammation. The ideal ratio is somewhere between 1:1 and 4:1. The average American senior is consuming these oils at a ratio closer to 20:1 or even higher. What that means physiologically is that your body is in a state of chronic low-grade inflammation that never fully resolves. And chronic inflammation of that kind is not just a cardiovascular issue. It affects your joints, your brain, your immune function. But the cardiovascular consequences are the most immediately dangerous because inflamed arterial walls are where plaque builds. Inflamed blood vessels are where clots form. Inflamed cardiovascular tissue is where heart attacks begin. And here is the part that makes this particularly difficult to avoid. These oils are not just in the bottle on your kitchen counter. They are in the crackers you snack on. They are in the salad dressing you pour over what you believe is a healthy lunch. They are in the margarine that was recommended to you years ago as a safer alternative to butter. They are baked into the granola bars, the whole grain cereals, the protein snacks marketed specifically to health-conscious older adults. You are consuming these oils in quantities far beyond what you realize, and your arteries are paying the price every single day. Now we arrive at the third food, and I want you to stay with me here because this one requires the most explanation. Not because it is complicated, but because the way it harms you is so deeply embedded in habits that feel completely normal that most people resist believing it even after they understand the science. This third food is not something exotic. It is not something you would ever think to question. It is something you have probably been told at some point in your life is actually good for you in moderation. Processed meat, bacon, deli turkey, packaged ham, salami, hot dogs, smoked sausage, canned meat products, the entire category of meats that have been preserved through salting, curing, smoking, or the addition of chemical preservatives. This is the third food that is quietly accelerating cardiovascular disease in seniors across this country, and the mechanism through which it causes damage is one that most people have never been told about clearly. The first mechanism is sodium. Processed meats are extraordinarily high in sodium, and the relationship between excess sodium and cardiovascular disease in older adults is not subtle. As you age, your kidneys become less efficient at filtering and excreting excess sodium from your bloodstream. That means sodium accumulates, and accumulated sodium pulls water into your bloodstream, increasing blood volume, which in turn raises blood pressure. Elevated blood pressure sustained over months and years does not just strain your heart. It actively damages the inner lining of your arteries, creating the microtears and rough surfaces where plaque finds its footing and begins to build. But the sodium is only the beginning. What makes processed meat uniquely dangerous, more dangerous than simply eating salty food, are the preservatives used to extend shelf life and maintain color, specifically nitrates and nitrites. These compounds, when they enter your digestive system, are converted into nitrosamines. And nitrosamines are among the most well-documented pro-inflammatory compounds that exist in the human food supply. The World Health Organization classified processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen, meaning the evidence linking it to cancer is definitive, but the cardiovascular damage it causes through systemic inflammation is equally serious and far less discussed. For a senior whose arteries are already navigating the natural challenges of aging, adding a daily or even a 3 times weekly serving of processed meat into that equation is like pouring a slow-acting corrosive into a pipe system that is already showing wear. The damage does not happen in one meal. It happens across hundreds of meals. Across years of Sunday morning bacon and deli sandwiches and convenient packaged proteins that seemed like reasonable choices at the time. And I want to be direct with you about something here because I think it is important. I am not telling you these things to frighten you into paralysis. I am not standing here telling you that every meal you have ever eaten was a mistake or that your health is beyond recovery. That is not the truth, and it would not be fair to tell you that. The human body, even a body that has been absorbing damage for decades, has a remarkable capacity to respond when you give it what it needs and begin removing what is harming it. The arteries can regain flexibility, inflammation can be reduced, blood pressure can normalize, cardiovascular risk can be meaningfully lowered. But none of that happens by accident, and none of it happens without first understanding what has been working against you. That is why this conversation matters. That is why knowing these 3 foods specifically, not just a vague instruction to eat healthy, gives you something concrete and actionable that you can apply starting with your very next meal. So let me give you the clearest possible summary of what you now know. Commercial white bread is converting to sugar rapidly in your bloodstream, triggering insulin surges, and introducing age compounds that stiffen and inflame your arterial walls. Refined vegetable oils are flooding your system with omega-6 fatty acids that have pushed your inflammatory balance so far out of proportion that your cardiovascular tissue is in a state of chronic low-grade inflammation that never fully resolves. And processed meats are combining excessive sodium with nitrate-based preservatives to raise your blood pressure, damage your arterial lining, and introduce pro-inflammatory nitrosamines into a body that is already working harder than it did 20 years ago just to keep your heart beating steadily. 3 foods. 3 distinct mechanisms of damage, all 3 operating silently. All 3 widely consumed by seniors who have no idea this is happening inside them right now. The question is what you do with this information, and my strong recommendation is that you do not try to overhaul everything at once. That approach fails almost every time because it is not sustainable, and sustainability is everything when it comes to cardiovascular health. Instead, pick one. Start with the bread. Switch to a genuine whole grain sourdough or a sprouted grain bread with a short ingredient list you can actually read and recognize. Just that one change, made consistently, will begin shifting your inflammatory baseline in a direction your heart will respond to. Then when that feels natural, look at your cooking oils. Replace the refined vegetable oils with extra virgin olive oil for low to medium heat cooking and avocado oil for higher heat. 2 swaps, 2 bottles. A change your arteries will begin benefiting from within weeks, and then address the processed meats. Not necessarily eliminating them entirely, but reducing the frequency dramatically. 3 times a week becomes once a week. Once a week becomes an occasional choice rather than a daily habit. Progress matters more than perfection, and your cardiovascular system will respond to genuine progress, even when perfection is not on the table. These are not radical changes. They do not require an expensive diet program or a complete lifestyle overhaul. They require awareness, the specific targeted awareness that comes from understanding exactly which foods are working against you and exactly why. That is what separates people who improve their cardiovascular health from people who keep making the same well-intentioned mistakes with different packaging. Your heart has been working for you every single minute, every single day of your entire life without stopping once. It has never taken a break. It has never asked for anything in return. The least you can do, the very least, is stop feeding it the 3 things that are making its job harder than it needs to be. You have that information now. Use it, and before you go, I want to hear from you directly. Drop a comment below and tell me, which of these 3 foods surprised you the most? Was it the bread, the vegetable oils, or the processed meats? Because your answer genuinely helps me understand what information seniors need most, and it shapes the videos I create next. So scroll down, leave your comment, and let me know. Every single response gets read. If this video opened your eyes to something you did not know before, share it with someone you care about. A spouse, a sibling, a friend who is still eating that packaged bread every morning without a second thought. That share could matter more than you realize. And if you want to keep receiving information like this, clear, specific, science-backed health guidance made specifically for people over 60, then subscribe to Senior Pulse and hit the notification bell, because the next video covers something equally important that most seniors are getting completely wrong, and you do not want to miss it.